Let's talk about this book because each week on Colorado Inside Out, we're going to talk about one different statewide or local ballot measure. And on page 34, I think it is, I do like the big print, I appreciate that, is Proposition KK. And Proposition KK is the Firearms and Ammunition Excise Tax, which calls for gun manufacturers, dealers, and ammunition sellers to pay a sales tax, and then that money would fund behavior and mental health services as well as school security. And let's talk with you about the KK.
Yeah, I think in a year in the legislature where there was so much focus on the ban on assault weapons, which didn't go through, this one kind of slid through underneath when legislators put it on the ballot. It's an interesting ideological question because what you're doing here is you're asking for a tax on these gun sales, essentially, to fund programs that don't really have a nexus to them. I mean, you do have gun violence prevention as one of the programs that's going to benefit from it, but you're also looking at money going to veteran and at-risk youth mental health, to school safety, to domestic violence victim support, and you have to ask, why are we taxing gun sales for those things? And I think especially when I'm looking at veterans' mental health, why aren't we asking the federal government for more money for veterans' mental health? That's really where a lot of that is going to be coming from. I think this also runs the risk of kind of lumping every gun buyer into this group of lawbreakers if you try to make a nexus there. Okay, we're going to tax your guns in order that we give money to victims of domestic violence. There is questions about whether we need more money. I mean, the federal the Federal Victims of Violent Crime Act funding has been cut in half since 2018. But is this the place to get the money from?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I mean, certainly we all support having more mental health services for vets and for at-risk youth. We support school safety and violence prevention. Nobody likes gun violence. And having those victim support services financed. What's interesting, too, is by taxing the gun industry or a business, you know, you bring out a whole lot of other impacts. The tax is passed on to the consumer, obviously. I think you'll see more people going to other states to buy firearms. So there's the question, will you really raise any money with this tax? Does it push people to a black market? You know, we saw when marijuana was legalized and then taxed heavily, you know, everybody said, well, we can tax it. Black market grows started getting busted between 2019 and 2022. And then there's been some talk about, are we trying to drive this industry away? And proponents of the bill say, oh, no, we're not. We're preserving Second Amendment rights and whatnot. But what do we do when we want to encourage a business to do business in Colorado? We give them tax incentives. And this is the opposite effect. So interesting, the impact of this tax, if it does pass.
Okay, all right.
I have seen editorials recently on everything from ballot box budgeting to ballot box biology, and once again, a question is going onto the ballot that, you know, did not even come close to having bipartisan support. And so I definitely agree with Chris. It's simple economics. When you tax folks who are business owners, when you tax and increase fees on developers or whatever the case is, they're going to pass that cost on to the consumer. And also that is a good parallel that you make with the marijuana issue. I still remember one of my favorite little snippets in Westward was right after the passage of Amendment 64, the question was, can you still score a nickel bag in Civic Center Park? And the answer was yes. So I totally agree with what you all are, said so far when it comes to that issue, and so it's going to be, again, in the hands of the Colorado voters, and we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, Patty, your thoughts on this?
Well, free enterprise. So it would be better if the money went directly to something that could be measured more easily than more vague programs like, how about Denver Health and other hospitals that have to deal with victims of gunshot wounds? Instead, we have vague programs that are kind of like the Office of Gun Violence. We don't know where the money's really going to go, how it's going to be collected. And again, it will be dealing with the consumer. The consumer is going to ultimately pay for it. And the question is, are we regarding this Second Amendment right, whether or not we agree with it? But is it a sin tax now? Is it the same as alcohol or anything else like that when it is a legal right?
Thank you for watching this ballot discussion. The Colorado Inside Out team will tackle one measure every week right up until Election Day, so don't miss an episode so that you're all set to vote on or before November the 5th.